Welcome, everybody. We are on our final week of sharing our faith stories. So thank you for being here. I'm going to jump right in and we'll spend a little time at the end for questions and wrap up stuff. This week is Justice Seeking Evangelism. Our Bible passage is Luke 4:16 through 21. I'm going to put that in the chat. So if you want to open another tab in your browser or grab the Bible real fast. It is Luke 4:16 through 21. And this one will sound familiar. It was our gospel reading a few weeks ago. Would someone like to read it?
I'll do it.
16 through 21.
All right. And he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as was his custom, he entered the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read. And the book of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him, and he opened the book and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are downtrodden, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord." And he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down, and the eyes of all the synagogue were fixed upon him. And he began to say to them, "Today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing."
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. So this is essentially Jesus' mission statement in the Gospel of Luke. What is Jesus saying he's here to do?
Turn the world upside down.
Yeah.
It's the good news to the poor, right?
Yeah. Good news to the poor. What else?
Free the captives.
Mm-hmm.
Proclaim the
Blind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, Susan.
No, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Did we say proclaim the good news? I don't know if we said that already.
Mhm.
To the poor, it says.
Mhm.
Turn up the volume.
Yeah, I can do that.
And proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
Yeah. Yeah. So quite often we can get caught up in Jesus was here to save us from our sin, which is true. But he's also here for a lot of other reasons, which is interesting. Sometimes we get kind of caught up on certain things he was here to do and forget about others. So how was Jesus' work? How has this work that Jesus talks about, how has it continued through the church throughout the centuries? And church, Big C church, the broader understanding of the church. How has it continued through the centuries?
Well, so I have a lot of opinions here, but at a basic level, I think pretty much every Christian church thinks that they are pursuing programs that assist the poor. I think that an awful lot of our various Christian churches don't really do most of the rest of it, and that I think some are actually actively in opposition to helping those who are captives, liberating the oppressed. I think that there is that really strange, but very large from a population perspective, far right side of Christianity that seems to think that Well, if you are making use of the system to make yourself wealthy, you are in God's favor. And I would not agree with that.
It's easy to get into a hashtag blessed sort of mindset of, oh, if I can go on amazing vacations, then I am hashtag blessed. And if I can,
Well, and you are blessed if you can go on amazing vacations, but if you're doing that and then turning around and actively supporting policies that make others feel unblessed, I think you should really be thinking about that.
yeah. And for people who don't have the resources to go on amazing vacations or have big homes or whatever material items that go along with hashtag blessed, does that mean that people who don't have those things are not blessed? Yeah.
When I was a little girl and I went to Lutheran school, and somehow at one point in school, we must have been talking about, I was in junior high, we must have been talking about who was rich and who wasn't rich and whatever. So I went home and I asked my mom, Mommy, are we rich? And my mother said, well, honey, we're rich in God's blessings. And that's something that I was blessed by my mother teaching me that at a really young age. I've never forgotten it. I think that justice seeking evangelism is a topic that I've studied quite a bit, as Pastor Jennifer knows. Is I led another Synod-wide study group on it, and I think that what I've discovered that God's justice means that He wants every family to have the opportunity to take care of themselves. So that's what Scripture tells us over and over again, especially in the Old Testament, and when they talk about the year of Jubilee. And so God's not a communist. He wants everyone to have the opportunity to work to support their families, because that supports their families, that makes them feel good about themselves also. So I think that as Christians seeking justice, we need to definitely help the downtrodden, but we need to make sure people have opportunities. And the last thing I'll say is that I think it's really important as Christians and as a part of our witness to the unchurched people that we as Christians need to be seen as leading these sorts of efforts. For instance, one of the things that speaks to my heart a lot is the plight of people that have been touched by human trafficking. This is something that really touches me. So this is something that I put my money to, and this is something that I'm happy to tell other people as a witness. This is something that touches my heart, and this is what I'm doing for that.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned the year of Jubilee, and that's what the passage that Jesus is referring to is referring to. So that, yeah, it's a time when God upends the status quo, and
He forgives. They forgive debts, and
slaves are freed,
release their slaves,
things like that. Yeah. So that year of the Lord's favor refers to the year Jubilee, but also to the eternal Jubilee that will come. But that doesn't mean we have to wait until then to get to work for it.
Right.
Yeah. So Kirk brought up a good point that, I'm sorry, Pastor.
No, I think Kirk, good point. I think the problem is that many preachers, I heard that, you do these things, then you will be saved kind of thing. But I think as Lutherans, my belief is that we are saved, therefore we engage in the good works.
Yeah,
Amen.
that's our thanks.
So
Yeah.
It's our response to the things that we're given.
that's right. I mean, it's almost like Mother Teresa. When Mother Teresa was asked by a reporter and said, Mother, tell us the secret of why you do so much service to the poor. She said, what service are you talking about? I don't do anything. I worship God. Whatever outflows of that worship is what you see, kind of thing. It's a, yeah.
Getting chills. That's lovely.
Mhm.
Well, I was just going to add to it. It's really kind of a both and. I'm thinking of Leslie Newbingen, who wrote a missionary and missiologist, and just, you know, kind of brilliant theologian, talked about how when you look at the early church, they were so attractive because on the one hand, this was a community that was living very differently than the world around them. They were taking care of each other. There were practical, real, tangible signs of grace among them. And, you know, they were the ones who would rush in and care for the sick when everybody else was rushing away. And then when people would see these wonderful things and they would say, why are you doing these wonderful things? They would say, in the name of Jesus Christ. They would be very explicit. They weren't just a social, you know, just a social service organization. They were very explicit about, we are doing this because of Jesus Christ. And here's the good news of Jesus Christ. So it was sort of a words and actions thing. And I think the challenge is we can kind of tip that toward one or the other. You know, we're out there doing really great stuff, which we should do, but we're not necessarily saying it's because of Jesus. Or we're out there saying you need to believe in Jesus, but there's no fruit of that. And I think what the early church did and we're called to do is proclaim the name and bear the fruit, which is sort of the higher calling, seems to me.
Yeah.
I could kind of follow up on that idea. I happen to be looking at, I'm a sort of a Bible depository, and I have my uncle's Bible right now. And on that passage, he had written on the margin, Jesus went to the church. And I think that's kind of a key thing about this, that he starts out by, it starts out talking about how he went to the synagogues. He went, and it's like, it starts at the church. It's people not doing that for some other reason. You know, it's part of their devotion to Jesus now, you know, or Jesus' devotion to God and to the church, even back then. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you both hit on it. The reason why I included this lesson is because I found in my interviews, when I was interviewing mostly non-mainline churches about evangelism, and this isn't monolithic, but I found that, I mean, they're really good about sharing their faith, and the ELCA is really good about serving people's physical needs, and we're not necessarily good at doing both. So I wanted to bring this lesson to help us bear in mind that, I mean, there's something there that both are needed, the way you were saying. And how do we bridge that gap so that you have both instead of just one or the other?
Yeah, good point.
That was a recurring theme. And I found some non-denominational churches that were doing very good work, and they were also saying why they were doing it. And I think as ELCA Lutherans, there's some growth there that could happen. I know that I'm a lot better at just serving people's needs and not really saying why. So yeah. I'm going to have us go on to our group discussion. Do you want to break up into small groups or just keep everybody together? How are you feeling?
Fine to be together.
Sure.
Yes, well enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, we've got a little smaller group tonight, so this sounds good. So the group first question for the group discussion is, why should we care for others' earthly needs? And some of this we've already touched on, but let's keep going.
Yeah.
Well, because the Bible mandates it. God said so. And if we're going to follow kind of the golden rule, if we want to, we are supposed to treat people as we would wish to be treated. That ties into it too.
I'm a product of the evangelistic missionary work of Europe. grandparents, great-grandparents. So you see me, which means that's your product, right? And when they came to our Lutheran missionaries, Frederick Heyer and Gunn and all that, when they came to preach the gospel, it did not make sense to them to preach the gospel because people are dying of hunger.
Yeah.
And that's how they started giving
Rest, right?
rice, and that's how the social gospel started. Of course, some of them were called rice Christians because they came for the rice, but then they became Christians. But then they had to go further because they are dying of simple things like diarrhea. Why are they dying? So no hygiene. So if you, not so much Lutheran, but that's a hospital started, schools were started by missionaries, not by British. If you go to a Catholic campus in India, you will see three things in the same campus: a church, a school, and a clinic. So they kind of beautifully combine the healing, preaching, and teaching work of Jesus. So I think they go hand in hand. I know when we are in an affluent society, they don't really make that sense. But so you go to some places where, yeah, how can you say Jesus saves me when they are dying of hunger without first at least helping them to listen what we are saying? Yeah. So I just want to say I'm the product of your work.
I would think if we say we have the heart of Jesus, if we say we follow Jesus, we should have that means having the heart of Jesus. That means not even just doing it because we're told to do it, but because we really care about it, because we really care about others. We really want to do this, whatever work it is, to help others, to help the less fortunate or those who don't have the same circumstances that we do, and share the gifts that we're given. If everybody shared what they had, nobody would be in need in our world. It's just the uneven distribution of things that people have and opportunities people have.
And this is actually making me think of something that might be counterintuitive, but 100 years ago, when the assembly line and manufacturing was becoming the way that things were done, the way that things were manufactured, when the consumer society was just starting, Henry Ford, who's never been thought of as a communist, certainly, or particularly generous, was quoted as saying that he had to pay his workers enough money that they could buy a car. And I don't remember the exact quote, but it was basically, well, if they're going to spend all day working on a car that they can't ever afford to buy, then that's problematic. And if they have this car and they like this car, then they're helping to sell the car to other people, in their own community. And it's just another, and it's another sale. And along with that, when I was in college, I worked in a couple of different retail jobs, and we got a discount, but I always worked in like furniture stores where, how much furniture are you going to buy when you're in college? But I worked, like, our store manager had been in a department store. And in an this was long enough ago that when he had started out, he worked in a very old school downtown department store that had every department, a drug department, a hardware department, you name it, they sold it in that department store. And he said, oh yeah, we gave a quote unquote generous discount to every employee, knowing that our employees were our best customer. And this same idea, they helped to sell the store to their neighbors. Oh yeah, oh, that's nice, where'd you get that? Oh, at the store where I work. And so and not that we're out to be actively using techniques to market ourselves and our congregation, but the reality is, as everyone's already said, really, but if we are helping others to help themselves, if we are helping others to achieve a standard of living where they are no longer struggling with very basic needs, but instead they're, getting up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and able to really think about, their faith and think about how they want to live their life, because they're no longer struggling in a day-to-day struggle just to feed themselves. Well, there again, that's in a way, that's a marketing of our faith.
Oh, I like it. Yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah. And to kind of follow up on the question too. Yeah, Kirk, I like that. I agree. Kind of like, why do we ask the question in the first place? Because it's like, you would think it would be so obvious to care for physical needs. But I think part of the challenge that we face in our context is I feel a lot of our Christian brothers and sisters, and even inside the Lutheran circles, have fallen into this sort of Gnosticism that prevails in our society, that following Jesus is about your spiritual growth and getting into heaven, and that the body doesn't really matter because it's about your spirit, and the earth doesn't really matter because, in some theologies, it's all going to blow up anyway. The material doesn't really count. So as long as you get somebody to say the sinner's prayer and they're going to heaven, all the material, physical, human need stuff it's not as important. Which is, we're not Gnostics. Jesus came in the flesh. But I think we live in a society that it's very tempting to fall into that sense of, well, as long as their souls are saved, as long as they should know Jesus, of course, like spiritual is important. But I think there's a temptation to divorce it from the physical in the way Christianity has been sort of understood predominantly in our context.
Yeah, we're whole people. We're spiritual and physical. Mm-hmm. And if Jesus came to proclaim good news to the poor, that's probably food. That's probably shelter. That's probably physical things. Because like you were saying, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if those things aren't met, we're not concerned about the higher levels of things.
I think that also 100 years ago, when people had problems, they went to each other, they went to their neighbors, they sought help among their friends and neighbors and family. Well, now 100 years on, there's so many social programs, people tend to look, society tends to look to the government for help. And I think so, as now we're in this post-Christian era, I think that unchurched people expect the government to it. And I think that as people of faith, we tend to think a lot more of that is happening, and we need to bring that back into our own realm to help others.
Yeah, we become disconnected as people, so we have to turn to kind of institutional, like big ways to get what we need, because we don't know our neighbors. We are far away from our families. We may not be close to our families, things like that.
Yeah, I'll share with you a couple thoughts. For many years, we served in rural Honduras, extremely poor. I mean, unbelievable. No running water, no toilets, dirt floors, thatched roofs. I mean, awful. People are starving. I mean, it's terrible. And maybe the vast majority of people, maybe as many as 70% of the population is under 15 years old. There's no men because they've all left. There's women with multiple babies and kids and more kids. And it's unbelievable. We worked at a place called the Children's Rescue Mission. Now, we focused primarily, initially, on feeding the people and getting them clean water, because you can't praise the Lord if you're starving and you're sick. It doesn't happen. It's exactly what Kurt said. And so, once they have some food in their stomach, right? And they're hydrated, then you can start talking to them about Jesus, right? I learned another thing that was quite eye-opening to me is that we've always heard, poor but blessed, poor people are poor but happy. They've got God's graces and all this. Well, fact is, down there, sooner or later, the people, they may be living out in the middle of nowhere, but they can figure it out because they're not living in a cave. Pretty soon they figure out they have no future. They're screwed and they know it. And that's not good for them. And it destroys them from the inside. They know they have no hope. Now, and that only Jesus can bring them that hope. This poor but happy thing is a myth. It's not true.
Yeah, it's an easy way to turn your head away from the poor and not help.
Yeah.
I just want to bring in the second group discussion question before we move on. And we've already addressed some of this, but how can caring for others' earthly needs spread the good news? So we've already touched on that a bit. If the relieving physical needs can then open up doors to talk about spiritual things. But what else? How else can caring for others' earthly needs spread the good news?
I still think that part of the things that we do to help others are a witness to non-churched people around us. So, and those people need evangelism too. So I think that when something is done in a community where there's a group of churches or a group of people that get together to, provide showers or to do a food bank or something like that, when those things happen, they're ministering not only to the people who benefit from the food bank, but we're letting non-church people see what we can get together and do and why we're doing it.
Well, that reminds me of the words of Jesus. And I know as Lutherans, that, Pastor Jennifer, you were saying this earlier, this is not inherently something we're comfortable with, but, Jesus did say, let your light shine so that others may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. So again, it's not, and I think we need to do that. Of course, not in a prideful way, but in a way that like you said, that, and that's what, again, the early church, hey, they're doing some really wonderful, unusual things. What's going on? It's attractive in the fullest sense of the word. Like if you see people serving other people with joy and behaving differently than the world, that's attractive, and people are going to ask questions and people are going to want to be a part of that. So it's letting that light shine. And I think Jesus is a compelling figure. And when we work for him and speak of him, people are going to be attracted to that.
Great. Yeah.
I was just thinking about Taco in San Diego. I've worked down there quite a few times, and the people that come and prepare the food and deliver, provide the food and then serving and all that. And we all greet the homeless people that come through the line. But I was thinking that I don't remember ever anybody doing anything that really says anything to them about Jesus or, being evangelized to in that direction. It's just providing food and good wishes. And I wonder if that's kind of a thing that Lutherans don't do that maybe other churches do better. I don't know I don't have any other experience, but kind of think about that. Poor people are living on the streets and they appreciate a smile and they appreciate the food, but they don't hear anything about Jesus that I can remember seeing happening much.
And it's a tough line between making the reason why you're doing this known is that it is related to Jesus without being manipulative or like preachy in an off-putting way. It's
Yeah.
so these are still questions I'm wrestling with.
Yeah.
So I don't really have answers for how to make that happen, but I'm hoping that together we can work on an answer.
I know there are some shelters, homeless shelters, that require the residents to go to the service if they're going to stay there. You want a bed here tonight, you got to come to the chapel service, right? And that, some people might not like that idea, but it's out there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think it is easy to get a bit shy about that because I think we've maybe personally experienced or know of people who, it's just sort of out there of people who have proclaimed Jesus in very, historically horrible ways, but, just very pushy and, you don't, the bullhorn guy and all of that. And we don't want to be that, right? But I tend to think we've overcorrected.
Yeah.
I tend to think we're so afraid of doing it wrong or giving offense. Again, remember, I grew up Pentecostal, so no problem talking about Jesus. And I think in my experience in our church that I love, I do think we've overcorrected a little. We're so shy about not doing it that way that we don't tend to do it at all. And that's why I appreciate opportunities in classes like this, because that's what we're about, right? We're about Jesus. We're about proclaiming the good news. So we have to figure out a way to do it that's maybe not the maybe destructive way that we were concerned about, but I think we still got to say Jesus. We got to proclaim the name. How do we do that in a winning way?
Amen.
Yeah, I think we do also, and I think that when I've talked to other friends about this sort of thing, specifically, if you want a meal, you need to come to the service, and anyone who needs the meal and resents the service, well, people who walk in darkness don't want the light, but they need the light, and I think that it is up to us to find some ways to shine the light for these people who are in darkness. So if anyone who resents having to go to a brief church service to get food, they need the heavenly food, and Christianity is a great antidote to poverty and to addiction. It's a great antidote. So I do think that, I've heard people, non-church people say, well, it wasn't very nice. I don't think you should make them have to go to a church service, but really that's the most important thing, really. Is their immortal soul. So yeah, I agree, Pastor Jen. I think that we need to stand up a little more for stuff like that.
Well, and if you offer it, we do simple suppers, and during the summer we did a brief service after dinner outside, and we would have, probably 15 or 20 non-church people come to the dinner. We had church people too, but there would usually be at least 5 people that would stay after. And it was available. So I can argue on all sides of the thing really well, but just making it available and not required, and especially being outside as people left, they could kind of stand at the perimeter and kind of watch what was going on, and this isn't so threatening, and then you'd see them come sit on the outside circle or whatever. And it may take baby steps, because some people will be put off and say, I don't want anything. But if you open the door and let them, peer in and realize it isn't so scary, then they're more receptive too.
Good point.
And if you meet them where they are, maybe it's not even stepping foot in the church. When we used to serve, at First and Fullerton, we used to serve on Tuesday nights a sit-down meal indoors, and now we hand out to-go meals. But
Mhm.
I remember one evening when our pastor asked anybody who wanted to stay to receive communion. And one of the guests just broke into tears. He says, you know how many years it's been since, I mean, I've been too embarrassed to go into a church and not welcome, but just, it was right there. It was available
that's
to,
awesome.
and it was just, it's so powerful to be able to offer that without any conditions. Like, you don't have to come in the church to do it. We're right here where you are, and you're all welcome. You're all welcome.
Thank you all for your ideas. I'm going to move us on to story time before we run out of time. I am going to break us up into groups for this one, just so that everyone has time to share. But the story time prompt tonight is: tell a story about something you or your congregation has done for the sake of others. Why did you/they do it? And some of you have already shared stories like that, so this should be easy. I'm going to break us up into 2 breakout rooms, and we'll have about 10 or so minutes. So share quick stories, because I want to make sure we have enough time to wrap up and have time for questions and last things. So, all right, see you in about 10 or so minutes.
You have a thought?
Let's join the room.
Welcome back. I think we got everybody back. Oh, I'm sorry that was not nearly enough time in our small groups. Our discussion was so good earlier. I hated to shorten it. So when you do this in your congregations, you'll have a chance to have a little bit more time. But thank you for bearing with me and for sharing your stories. I just wanted to bring you back and have a few minutes to talk about the class and find out your thoughts and your questions, anything you want to learn from me before our evening is over, before you take this into your congregations. So we're getting this curriculum printed up for all of the congregations. They should be sent out hopefully in the next few weeks to all the congregations in Pacifica Synod. But in the meantime, if you want it early, go ahead and email me. I'll put my email address in the chat. It's pastorjennifergarcia@gmail.com. So if you're watching this recording later, you can also feel free to contact me at pastorjennifergarcia@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to email you what I have or what's coming to you. I know one congregation has already emailed me because they're planning on doing it during Lent instead of during Easter or beyond, so they needed it a little bit earlier. But yeah, what questions do you have, or what thoughts do you have after these 6 weeks?
Not so much questions, but I want to say how grateful I am to walk through this. Thank you. Thank you for providing this. And I had the same question actually about the YouTube is there, but I need printed material. So thank you. They are coming. My hope is to do during the Lent too, but but thank you.
Sure, yeah. Email me and I'd be happy to send you the materials so you can use them.
Okay. When you say they're being sent to congregations, are they being mailed? Or because I had intended on putting a web page up on our Synod website with the link to the recordings, and then if there's resources to put up there, unless you'd rather them not be up there.
No, that's fine. Gloria Day has been gracious about wanting to print up the resources and send them to all of the congregations. So David and Susan's congregation, thank you. So that's going to be sent out. So we're working out the final details about that, but it'll be sent out hopefully in the next several weeks, plenty of time before Easter. But yeah, if we could have it on the website also, that would be very good. I don't have it copyrighted or anything, but I'm also not making anything from it. So
it'll be pretty quick to create that page. So when you've got it, let me know.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, we're planning, we've already talked about about this course with with the gift group that we have, and we just finished Ephesians a couple of weeks ago. And then we'll have kind of a potluck event for March, and then April, we'd like to start doing this. And we've told our friends in our group about it, and everyone's very excited about sharing their faith story. So
Awesome.
we're really excited to lead it. I don't know, we'll probably kind of tweak it a little bit and do it over a couple months time.
Yeah, we're not really sure how it's gonna work out yet, because we're not sure exactly how Pastor David, he's gonna do a Lenten long series on this. And so we don't want to just duplicate what he's already doing, but we want to support it and dovetail on it. We have a highly effective long-term small groups that we've been in for what, 8 or 10 years. And so we're going to try to integrate somehow a complementary approach to the topic, so that we're complementing Pastor Dave and the work that Pastor Jennifer's done inside the small groups.
Awesome. Yeah, this would definitely be well suited for a small group.
Well, and I have to say that practicing our stories and what have you with a friendly audience to start makes you realize that, oh, that wasn't as hard as, or as scary, or as fill in the blank, whatever your word is. So it's a platform for people to start feeling comfortable. And then when God presents those other opportunities, it's like, okay, I can step through this door. And that we do have to remember that God will give us the words, even if we're not sure. So it was very encouraging and uplifting. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear, because that's my hope.
Jennifer,
Mhm.
I think you did a great job. I've much enjoyed participating. We made every session, so we got
I
all of
appreciate
it.
that. Thank you.
And we really, I know my wife too, we really enjoyed it, and compliment you on what a great job you've done. And it turned out to be even better than I hoped. So kudos to you.
Thank you. And thank all of you, because without your stories, this would be a really boring class. Well, as we're approaching 8 o'clock, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat. This is a survey for you. It's not too long. If you wouldn't mind filling that out tonight, or Terry, if you could send it out in the recap email, that would be most appreciated. Yeah, so just a little feedback for me. And thank you all for your participation and your generosity with your stories. And it's been fun to do this with you. And I'll stick around for any more questions, and feel free to email me at any point, even, months down the road when you're doing this. If you have more questions that come up, feel free to contact me.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks so
much.
much.
You all.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye now.
God bless.
Bye.
God bless all of you.
You too.
Yeah.
Thank you.